Hey, and welcome in this next video of Azure Information Protection, the admin series. In this video, we are going to talk about how to create different policies for different group of people. So for example, you have your default policy, but what if you want to deviate from the default policy for a subset of your users? So what we're going to do is go into our Azure Information Protection. If you haven't activated Azure Information Protection yet, check out my Getting Started video on how to start with Azure Information Protection, and then it will be enabled and you can use it. So when we go into Azure Information Protection, you will actually see two type of policies. You will have the global policy, and that's really the policy that is for every single user who has access to Azure Information Protection. But then you also can define scoped policies, and scope policies is really to define specific policies for a subset of users based on a security group or just by name. So what we're going to be doing here is we are going to create a scoped policy for our financial team. So our financial team has to deal with more sensitive information. So what I'm going to create is a new policy. So I start by add a new policy here, give it a name. So financial team policy. You can give it a description. And very important, I need to define which users or groups will get this policy. And what is important is the second part of that line is that groups must be mail enabled. So if you just have security groups that are not mail enabled, that won't work for them. So go into the users, and I have a security mail enabled security group financial team that I can use here. Select it. Okay. And what you're going to see is by default, all the labels that you get will be the same as your global policy. And you cannot change that. So you cannot delete it or change the label. So everything here is completely grayed out. So you cannot override your default policy. So if you have made changes to your default policy, you can't reverse them in a scoped policy. So sometimes it's better not to touch the default policy unless you're absolutely sure that everybody will have to have that same setup. Here you can change the settings of the policy, and on top of that, you can also add specific labels. How to create labels, we're going to cover that in a next video, but here you can see that for this part, there's an additional policy that I've defined for financial team. So now I'm going to save this. And as what I also discussed during my getting started video is that you need to publish the policy to make it available. And now you will see that I have two policies, one for the financial team, one that is a global. And that way you can actually differentiate policies between different group of users.